last year. Diesel customers are also paying a lot more today. Find more news on afn.net. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our free daily email news briefs on afn.net.
When you hear this
is American Family News.
You know what follows is the truth. Your news from a Christian perspective.
Hundreds of teachers are going to have to walk into that school building, and they are forced to swallow political ideology that in many cases violates their very faith and conscience.
If you miss it at the top of the hour, American Family News podcasts are available at afn.net. And sign up for our daily news brief at afn.net.
You know, as Christians, we have to understand and be real with where we are.
That's what we have to see first, individually.
And where our mindset is and what we desire.
Airing the Addisons.
I think what God is really calling us back to, it's those individual personal revivals in our own lives where we're like, oh Lord, what have we done? We have minimized you.
Promoting truth, wisdom, and empowerment.
As the church, man, we should be on the forefront of making disciples, of indoctrination and godly things.
If we don't train our kids, they will not be able to stand.
Airing the Addisons.
On American Family Radio, thank you so much for listening. I'm Miki.
And I'm Will.
And Sweet Victory and J-Mac are on tap to help us navigate the show. We really do appreciate you sticking with us, especially as we run through a multi-part series of discussions on the topic of social emotional learning. And really, it's just the aim is to alert the body of Christ. Like, it's just to say, hey, guys, our kids are being subjected to things that are antithetical to the faith.
Yeah.
And of course, this does presume that this faith is being passed on to our children. And for those of us who have our children educated in a system that, let's just be real, that begins with suspending any knowledge that you have of God. That's how it begins. Or saying that he doesn't exist. Or saying that he is irrelevant to what we do here.
Right.
Okay. Then you cannot afford to be unaware of the additional insidious ways that public education seeks to undermine Christian parents. And I know that's a lot, but that's really my aim. My aim is to say, hey, guys, because here's the question that, we can't keep ignoring. There is a great falling away. And I think a lot of people look at that and they say, well, that's biblical. But I think what they have in mind is that there would be a great falling away. You think of adults who, have made a choice to walk away, to reject the truth. And that's true. That is happening when you look at the church collectively. There is a great falling away. But I think there is a great falling away that many parents could not imagine that they would be a part of that story. And it's in their own children. It's in the children that they are raising, that they are trying to foster a biblical worldview for these kids or foster that in them. And they're being undermined, like just left and right. They're being undermined. And so one of the things that we try to do is to alert parents. And I understand, look, this is a very uncomfortable conversation, because when you have your kid in a system that you're like, or your grandkid in a system, you're like, what? Like the first thing is anger. And usually it's anger at the one who's bringing the news, right? It's like, what are you saying? I can't believe you're
right.
All I'm doing, I'm presenting. Well, let me not minimize what I'm doing, because I am offering an incredible amount of commentary, but the commentary is fueled by the facts of what's in the programs that are proliferating across the country under the guise of social emotional learning. So the first response is usually anger at the person who brings that message. But then hopefully, and I pray that this is true for the people of God, that after that anger comes action.
Yeah.
Right. I'm reminded and encouraged by the grandmother who called in and who said, hold on a second. I've got kids who are being educated in the public, or grandkids who are being educated in the public school system. How can I spot this? How do I know where this is?
Right.
And to that end, we talked about that there are certain questions that you need to ask. You need to encourage your the parents of these kids to go down to school and be the parents and care about what's going on and ask questions, ask difficult questions, ask bold questions.
Yes.
You know, it's gonna take a little bit of boldness. Actually, it's probably gonna take a little bit more than a little bit, but it's gonna be that it will be required of us. Today, what we're gonna do, a lot of the discussion is gonna be fueled by several clips that we have, because again, I believe that there are people who would listen to this conversation and say, you know, Miki, social emotional learning has been around for decades, and it's been innocuous. I would argue that. I don't think there is such a thing as a neutral worldview. Now, I know people say, well, if you really want to drill down into it, and I'm like, well, yeah, I do. I do. Like, you know, people say, well, if you want to get deep, then yeah. Okay, I do want to get deep. I think that we have failed as Christians on many fronts to get deep. We've just taken people at their word and we just say, okay, well, then we can, you know, coexist, whatever. I do want to get deep. I do. I want to ask the question, is there a neutral worldview? Is there a worldview that does not attack the truth of Scripture? Is there a worldview that does not attack the claims of Christ that we can say we can live in harmony with? Well, again, when you drill down, no, no, there just isn't. And so social emotional learning, I would argue that has not been neutral, okay, but it may not have been as harmful as I would say, this is my opinion, it is now. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that it is harmful is because it is not covertly indoctrinating kids. It has now reached the place where it is overtly indoctrinating kids. That's right. And it is overtly social emotional learning programs and curricula all across this country. It is overtly indoctrinating kids with an overt worldview. Okay. So that's pretty bold, right? Like so we want to change the way kids think. We want to change the way kids empathize. We want to change the way kids engage. And so then change communities, change the world around us. And now also admitting that we are filtering that through a lens that is critical race theory. It is critical theory. And also understand, I'm going to read to you several things today as well. You need to be mindful that hidden, these people and all of their hidden things, right? Hidden in the CRT language, which you uncover the CRT language, but they hide. It's sort of like, it's like a turducken. It's like a It's like a turducken, okay? You got the turkey, then you got the duck, and then you got the chicken, and you keep going through all these layers, and people are like, you're messing up the turducken, Miki. I know you think good when you think turducken, but hidden inside the CRT language, if they let you find that, which I find it for you.
Because that's always changing as well.
Ever changing. And they try to find ways to sort of not make it as obvious to you, right? Because should you be alerted, you might respond. Okay. Right. But hidden within the CRT language is critical queer language. Okay. But that is, even though, guys, we have observed some radical things pop off in our culture with regard to the hypersexualization of children, robbing children of their innocence and their natural God-given identities. We have also seen that they recognize that if parents are alerted to this, parents will take dramatic steps to protect their children.
Which they should.
Absolutely. And so because they recognize this, the critical queer narrative is not, and I know you may think this is hard to believe, it is not as overt as you might imagine. Now, look, it is there, and I think it's pretty obvious, but there is a there is a recognition that if we are super out there, parents are going to start ripping their kids from our clutches.
It's amazing to me how you have this critical race theory, then you say critical queer theory, how these things, the race aspect and the sexual deviancy aspect is lumped together. It's tied together. Like these things are like tied together. So they use certain agendas, you know, the whole race thing, to get traction for this other stuff. You know, and so they fold that in under the struggle of being black or being,
my goodness,
it's amazing how they have done that so successfully.
Exactly. To the point that you're making, I am going to show this successfully. And you say, that's so confident of you. Well, because I have it and I read it. So I'm going to show the point that you just made successfully as it's peddled by one organization that is another one of these purveyors of social emotional learning content, the Committee for Children. We've got a number of clips from them that we're going to play today, but I'm going to show you in their equity statement. So they've got an equity statement. So you go digging. By the way, a lot of these organizations have videos that their company will put out that is on their website. When you click on the video on the website, of course, it takes you to YouTube, but some of the videos are not like public. They're not published, right? So they're not kind of like searchable, if you will. I don't know if that's how somebody more technical than I am will understand. So you go to the video and you're like, oh my goodness, this is such important information. And the video has like 900 views. You're like, how'd you guys get it so that no one's aware of that when you've got your other videos that have like 12,000 views or like 9,000 views? How does this one only have 900? Well, because it's on the website and you would only find that video if you're clicking under certain tabs and reading information, which is what I'm doing because I think you need to know. So anyway, I'm going to make that point that you just made with the evidence from the Committee for Children, in particular, their equity statement, how they take the guise of critical race theory, which is problematic enough. But then in that, again, turducken, they put in also critical queer theory, because while they've got you going and while your heart's bleeding, which is why you need your breastplate of righteousness. So while they've got your heart bleeding, they're just like, finish him. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I'm sorry. All of these references. Anyways, so here's what I want to do. I want to start off with a clip, and this is from the Committee for Children. Now, Will the Great, you tell me if we have time for this clip.
Let's see. Yes.
Okay, we have time for this clip. All right, so this is the Committee for Children. This is just to give you a little background on their legacy, where they've come from and where they want to go, because then a lot of our conversation will revolve around this particular organization, which is sort of like the Castle understudy. It's another one of those purveyors of social emotional learning. This is clip 3.
What if you could change the lives of 100 million children? What if you could give them the gift of empathy and use effective ways to help them smile wider, breathe deeper, and grow kinder? What if you could be part of a kindness revolution? For more than 40 years, Committee for Children has helped children learn, grow, and thrive. With research as our foundation, we teach them how to understand emotions, build meaningful relationships, and resolve conflicts. And we're just getting started. We have big plans to positively transform the social-emotional well-being of 100 million children annually by 2028. Because when you help a child, you help a family, a school, a community, and ultimately the world. It's called the empathy effect, and we need you to take it to new heights. Become an advocate, lend your voice, and let's grow kinder together. Okay, so I am very tempted to like pre-chew all of this, but I feel like I don't need to. I feel like our listeners, I feel like families who are listening, certainly you've heard us talk about these things a lot, and so you've heard the buzzwords. I feel like you heard them. Did you not? I mean, did you not hear? Okay, so we've talked about the fault in our fields. We've talked about the problem with empathy, where you build empathetic children around sort of like ignoring the naked emperor. Okay, that's what our modern definition of empathy is. It is that you celebrate the naked emperor in the parade, right? And you create kids who will all, rather than being the ones who historically we understood would be the first to shout out, the emperor has no clothes on. The kids historically were the first ones who would say that. Why? Because there is an honesty and there is an innocence of children that they are the first ones to kind of show up with truth. They're the first ones to say, when you get home from the gym, you stink. Like, adults, you learn how to, like, what do they call it? Practice, study, non-observance, where you work on not seeing what you actually see. Children don't have that. They say exactly what they see. And so you have to train them to see something different. And this now is called empathy, where we feel with people. We don't point them in the direction of truth because that's compassion. We've talked about this. But what we do is we just kind of get down in the dirt with them and say, yeah, it really stinks to be what I am. All right, we got to grab the break. So that's the Committee for Children. We've got more from them when we come back, and we'll break it all down, read their statements, and just alert you so that you can parent better. Aaron the Addisons, American Family Radio. We'll be right back.
Death, an intruder. This is Ken Ham, CEO of the ministry that built a full-size Noah's Ark south of Cincinnati. Perhaps the question Christians hear the most, and even ask themselves, is why does God allow suffering? Indeed, because of suffering in our world, it can be an intensely personal question. So how do we answer it? Well, the Bible begins by giving us the history we need to understand why the world is the way it is. God originally created a perfect world. There was no violence or pain. But this world was ruined by the rebellion of the first man, Adam. His sin brought an intruder into the world, death. And God had to judge sin with death. You see, we all sinned in Adam, who represented us. In other words, it's really our fault the world is the way it is.
Plan your visit to the full-size Noah's Ark at the Ark Encounter when you go to AnswersRadio.com. Children are free for all of 2022, so bring the whole family. AnswersRadio.com.
We live in a day when America's families are under attack like never before.
Buddy Smith, Senior Vice President of the American Family Association.
The war against biblical principles rages on numerous fronts. The internet, Hollywood, Washington, D.C., America's corporate boardrooms, and the list goes on. At American Family Association, we're committed to standing against the enemies of God, the enemies of your family. And we recognize it's an impossible task without God's favor and your partnership. Thank you for being faithful to pray for this ministry, to give financially, and to respond to our calls for activism. What you do on the home front is crucial to what we do on the battlefront. We praise God for your faithfulness, and may He give us many victories in the battles ahead as we work together to restore our nation's biblical foundations.
My name is Vladimir. I received my Operation Christmas Child shoebox during a harsh winter in Ukraine, where I grew up. My favorite item was minty dental floss. I remember thinking, wow, I guess they have interesting candy in America. I want children to experience the same unconditional love I did at the age of 9. To learn more or to pack a shoebox gift online, please visit SamaritansPurse.org/OCC. That's SamaritansPurse.org/OCC.
This year, Operation Christmas Child is celebrating its 200 millionth shoebox. Send joy to a child in need with Operation Christmas Child. Pack a shoebox with fun toys, school supplies, and hygiene items. Then bring it to a drop-off location during National Collection Week, November 14th through the 21st. Or build a shoebox online. The good news of Jesus Christ is shared alongside your gift, and each child is invited to join a discipleship program. Visit SamaritansPurse.org/OCC to learn more.
Screaming out, set me on fire, make me a blaze till my heart expire. Set me on fire, as I give you praise and lift your name higher. Lord, set me on fire, make me a blaze till my heart expire. Set me on fire, as I give you praise and lift your name higher.
So the big shift was back in 2020 where social emotional learning officially itself to transformative social emotional learning, a complete and total. And they've been using this term here, which I think is really, really interesting, systemic SEL, right? Because everything is systemic. And so essentially, though, the reason you need to be concerned when you talk about social emotional learning and people are calling it systemic or saying, let me not say calling it, that might confuse you. They want to label it as systemic SEL, what they are talking about is sort of infiltrating the entirety of your kid's education. So if you have something that is systemic, as it might infer, it is in your system, okay? So what they want when they say systemic social emotional learning is for social emotional learning to not be relegated to just being a class that is taught by a social emotional teacher, something like that, or not just a session or a part of the day. When they say they want systemic social emotional learning, because you got to remember, they've got a lot of money that they can allocate towards social emotional learning. Certainly those post-pandemic dollars can be allocated toward this. So now if you have more money, you can expand the intrusion. So you should be listening for that. You should ask your school, ask your kids' schools, do you guys have something called systemic social emotional learning? And then you should ask them, what does that mean? And then just listen, just pause. Some of these things, I'm convinced you don't have to do a whole lot of talking. You just ask them questions and let them fumble around on the answers. Because I think when you start to reveal that you care by asking some of these questions, it can make a lot of people around you very anxious, but that's okay. Let them be anxious. Let them have a little social anxiety, because you're the parent and those are your kids and you have every right to care.
That's right.
All right. So we're talking about social emotional learning. Welcome back. This is Aaron the Addisons on American Family Radio, by the way. I'm Miki.
And I'm Will.
Okay. Several clips here, and they're kind of lengthy. So what I want to do is, and this doesn't always translate well on radio, but again, I'm going to take the risk here because I want you to understand that the people who are pushing the programs, the people who are pushing the content have a worldview.
Yes.
And they are very convicted about this worldview, and it is making its way, it has made its way into the programs that your kids are being subjected to.
That's right.
Again, under the guise of social emotional learning. So this organization, Committee for Children, as you heard in the clip before we went to the break, been around for 40 years. As social emotional learning, as kids and communities have changed, they have changed to create kids who are more empathetic, more kind or kinder, and more inclusive. And so they're changing the world. Pinky and the Brain style. They're just changing the world. But here you have clip 4. Now, let me set this up for you because you're going to hear a series of voices, and I just want you to pay attention, okay? Because remember, these people are making the content. They are disseminating the content. This is making its way all around, all across this country. Now, under Castle has a special, and this is not the organization you're going to hear from now, but I want to give you a little bit of a perspective. Not only do you have millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars going towards social emotional learning, maybe at the $1 billion mark here. Not only do you have that, but Castle has a special initiative. They call it their Collaborating States Initiative, that under their leadership, Castle facilitates social emotional learning in more than 40 states. I mean, if you put down the 2 and carry the 1 and round it up, that's almost all of the country. Okay. And anyway, so just to give you an idea of where this stuff is proliferating and the number of kids that are potentially impacted, as of 2021, there were 49.5 million pre-K-12 kids in public schools. As of 2021, 49.5 million pre-K to 12th grade public school students. I just give you that to have a perspective of the type of access to kids that's possible when you talk about how we're indoctrinating kids, how we're shifting the way kids think, how we're shifting the way kids view the world. Guys, it is a very powerful position to be in to affect the life of a child. And I'm going to get to the clip here, but again, just somebody kicked over a soapbox. And so I just want to, I'm just going to stand on it for a second. Okay. We have so undermined the importance of impacting children's lives in the church. It is shameful that we have downgraded that as an important work. Oh, I'm just a mom. Oh, I just do this. And the world has seen the importance and the value of having the minds and hearts of children. And so they have clamored to keep it in every possible arena. This is very shameful. Very shameful. back to this committee for children. So here's the clip, and we're getting set up. This is clip number 4, Will the Great. You're going to hear a series of voices. I want to describe to you or explain to you who these voices are, and I want you to just listen. You'll be able to hear the shift in the voices. The very first voice that you're going to hear is the CEO of the Committee for Children. Remember, the ones whose goal it is to reach 100 million children yearly by 2028. All right. The very first voice that you're going to hear is a woman named Andrea Lovenhill. She's the CEO of CFC. The next voice you're going to hear is a man named Jing Wang. He's a senior video producer. Okay, so producing the content that's going into the schools that helps shape the narrative and the discussion that your kids are having, whereby they are learning how to be socially and emotionally stable. Okay. Then you're going to hear another woman, and really listen carefully. This is the third voice. She starts out by saying, I wasn't straight. I wasn't. And then she'll continue. You'll hear her. This woman is the public relations manager. So she's not making a mistake in her communication. You have to understand that when a person is educated in public relations, as I was, you have to understand that we understand the value of the words we choose. We understand what kind of problems might be caused by what we say and how that might affect people we are tasked with representing. Let me just say that from a public relations standpoint. And that's the only we in that description. Okay? So I want you to understand, when you hear this woman speaking, she is the public relations manager. There is not going to be a cleanup after this. She intentionally is putting herself out there, and CFC's move toward this LGBTQIA plus inclusive programming under the guise of social emotional learning. All right, I'm going to stop there. There are 2 other voices that you will hear, but I want to make sure that we get this clip in, so we're just going to roll it. This is clip number 4. Here we go.
When I finally got the opportunity to participate in Pride events as a young adult, I just felt such joy.
I think the ability to be joyful and to fully express yourself going all out is a really important part of the queer culture, to celebrate ourselves in the face of oppression.
I wasn't straight, I wasn't a lesbian, I'm bisexual, I'm somewhere in the wiggly middle. Pride means being in the wiggly middle.
We have such a corner on the market for culture, let's just be honest about it. There's so much wonderful music, dance, books, art.
It's all part of the fun, but it's also part of the fight too. Pride means community. It means love. Every Sunday night, we would have a group of my closest friends that I call my family over, and I feel so much pride when we all get together.
When I married my spouse, I felt pride because I, growing up, assumed that I couldn't have that.
I decided to do a duet dance with another man. I wanted to show love between 2 men are just as natural and beautiful and powerful as what people are used to seeing elsewhere.
I think social emotional learning gives us all the ability to understand each other better, to navigate conflicts, to build relationships beyond boundaries.
It encourages a lot of kindness and not only awareness of differences, but an acceptance and celebration of them.
Empathy and perspective taking and being open-minded, all these things are really fundamental.
The best thing that you can do is create a welcoming and inclusive space so that those children feel valued and feel seen.
I just keep thinking of the time when I first came out, and I was frankly not okay. And having a space in school where I felt safe saved my life.
My hope is that everyone believes that each child is innately valuable and deserving of dignity, and that we can support their strengths and their development.
Not just tolerant, but welcoming, bring it on, let's go. I want to hear all about who you are and what makes you you.
Please lean in to do that work and do it well and do it with integrity.
Man, you know, a picture is really worth 1,000 words. We'll put a link in the show notes to that particular video. That's all one video, by the way. That is produced by the Committee for Children, which produces content for social emotional learning, which is not hiding the fact that not only is it producing the kind of content that is consistent with their values and conviction, but their employees are like leaned in. Okay, their employees are all on board for this content. I mean, Will the Great, I'm just thinking, like, as you're grabbing these clips, like what are your thoughts? I mean, it's so obvious to me
that they have again used these things that may have seen in the past to be like good things, as far as like, you know, helping to push in their agenda. You even heard the last person say, not just tolerant.
Come on.
But you have to be, you know, it's like,
let's uplift these voices. Let's celebrate.
And at one time, that was the whole mantra: tolerance. You need not tolerance. You have to accept it. You have to celebrate it. You have to take it all in. We want you to be on the forefront, be an advocate, all this stuff. You know, you see how it has morphed into something where they said it was not. Now it's being forced.
That's right.
Upon people. And so, yeah, it's crazy.
I think the parents have to just take a step back and ask what the implications are that these people are fueling the social and emotional learning that our children are sitting under. Like what is the weight of that? What does that look like? How does that eventually kind of all shake out in our culture and in our society at large? You have to understand how impressionable our children are and how they really do take adults at their word. They really believe what adults are teaching them. And so if you are teaching a kid that empathy means denying truth, or if you're teaching a kid that there is no such thing as absolute truth, there's only your truth and his or her truth, or they and them's truth, okay? Then children grow up not only believing this, but as they harden in their convictions and understand that if you think of kids as like Play-Doh, or you think of them as clay, when they're very young, man, if you've played with Play-Doh with your kids that one time and decided never again, I'm just kidding. But as you play with Play-Doh with your kids, you can see that even your touching the Play-Doh puts your fingerprints on it. Just touching the Play-Doh puts your fingerprint on it. You press it into your hand and you get those lines from your hand in the Play-Doh. People in the world understand this better than those of us in the church, because there's only two groups, right? There's the us and the them. There are those who are on the narrow, straight path, following the Lord Jesus Christ, and there are those who are on that wide path that leads to destruction. There's only two groups. We want people to not be on that path. We're not going to join them on that path. We're going to beckon them off of that path. But you have to understand that under the guise of social emotional learning, our kids are being made our enemies. Our kids are seeing us as not on the narrow path, but with the narrow mind, like those who are not worthy to live. You understand what I'm saying? Those who are their enemies in real time. And I think it's important to note here, and you heard all of these voices. There were 5 voices. I'm going to tell you these people's names. You can look them up later. You can go and find what their work is and what they're doing. You can just go to the Committee for Children's website and do what I did. I call it deep dive because it makes me feel smart, but it really is just perusing their website. And honestly, going to their YouTube channels, and as much as this is not the fun part for me, watching some of their webinars, which I find boring. But I watch their webinars because I believe that they are hiding what they're teaching our kids. And yes, they are. They are hiding what they teach our kids. They don't start their webinars by revealing all of their cards. But as they get into their webinars and they start introducing their panel guests and sharing all of their screens and all of this stuff, blah, 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 blah. You see that the narrative has completely shifted. Guys, this is not a one-off kind of a thing. This is not and by the way, it's not a trendy thing. There has been a pendulum shift here. And so what has happened now is that diversity, equity, and inclusion, these are the perpetual talking points. And you can see it, you can read it in their content, which I have done. I'm going to share some of that with you today. Excuse me. And you can also see it in their videos. You can experience it in their webinars, where they go to great lengths to put together these nice presentations, right? And they continue to throw out the word evidence-based. And nobody checks that. You're like, wait, how are we collecting data?
Right.
What are our markers? Like, how are we, excuse me, how are we measuring success? But anyway, in this video that you just heard, I think it's so important for you to recognize that the Committee for Children featured the CEO of the Committee for Children, who identifies herself as a lesbian, as a member of the LGBTQIA plus community. You've got the senior video producer, you've got the public relations manager, you've got the marketing editor, and one of the last voices, you've got this woman who is the regional manager for education partnerships, which I define as expanding your mission, which I define as outreach. Who will we align with so that we continue to proliferate our ideas and affect and impact the lives of children? Guys, we cannot be asleep at the wheel on this. We've got to pay attention and be engaged. We'll be right back after this break. Stay close.
Forget about Facebook.
The last 10 days we've been banned twice, and is unbanning a word?
They put us under the ban. Christians and conservatives don't need you, YouTube.
Banned one day, banned again.
AFR programs are now live streaming on the AFA streaming app. Now you can get shows like today's issues straight from the source.
Put back on the next.
Just say unbanned.
Unbanned.
Just search AFA streaming or visit streaming.afa.net to sign up. The AFA Resource Center has all your favorite items. Everything from books, movies, shirts, and even hats. Introducing AFA's polyester and twill hats, starting at just $18. Whether you're into fashion, a collector, or you're just having a bad hair day, these hats are just what you need. You can buy one for yourself or a friend. Purchase your AFA hat today at resources.afa.net.
Hey, this is Steve Tiber with 8 Days of Hope. Do you know over the last 2 years, Southwest Louisiana has faced multiple storms, including Hurricanes Laura, Delta, and Zeta? 8 Days of Hope sent our rapid response teams to help in these areas after Hurricane Laura hit Lake Charles and again after the flooding in 2021. Well, today we're excited to announce that our 18th rebuilding trip will take place in Lake Charles from December 3rd through to December 10th. Thousands of volunteers will gather from around the country to love and serve this community by helping them repair their homes that were affected by these disasters. We're going to focus on roofing and drywall, painting, electrical work, flooring, and so much more. We can't wait to see what God is going to do. So there's a couple ways you can help with this mission. First, pray. Pray that God will speak through our actions to each family and make himself known. Second, consider volunteering. It's free, and we provide the food and the lodging. Hey, go to our website, 8daysofhope.com, read the FAQs, and you can volunteer right there. Again, that's 8daysofhope.com.
Let's see, if something costs less, but people are happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's MediShare. Maybe you've heard switching to MediShare to pay for healthcare can save the typical family $500 a month, and that's huge. But it's also true that people are way more satisfied after making the switch, too. The customer satisfaction rate for MediShare is double that of the typical health insurance plan. Double. MediShare works. It's been around for more than a quarter century, and members have shared more than $3 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So, yeah, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. So if you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan you're happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. 833-44-BIBLE. That's 833-44-BIBLE. 833-44-BIBLE.
Feel thorns where my crown was. I'll be weak, but I'm alive from the dust until dawn. Yeah, I'll survive, cause I got sweet victory. Nobody can take it from me. Sweet victory, cause I got sweet victory. Yeah.
Welcome back to Aaron the Addisons on American Family Radio. I'm Miki.
And I'm Will, and that's Triple E with Sweet Victory.
Yes, she's on tap, as is J Mac, to help us navigate the show. Perfect. Very well done. Well done, lad. Very well done. Listen, we're talking about social emotional learning. Really, this is just one of those. I'm I'm just trying to clang the metal cup against the bars. You know what I mean? I guess, I don't know if that's the right illustration, but just, I mean, I don't know. Okay. Nobody knows. Trouble I've seen. Anyway, what I'm trying to do is sound an alarm and just help parents out. Guys, I often say this, because I think the question could be, Miki, why do you care so much? Why are you constantly talking about what's happening in public schools? Don't you educate your kids at home? Like, why do you care? I do, but I also recognize that I am a part of a larger context. Like my home, yes, my home and my kids are my responsibility. But I exist. My chief, first and foremost, identity is as a follower of the Lord Jesus Christ, which means I exist in the context of the body of Christ.
So then the question would be, well, why don't you care? Why don't you care?
Like, why wouldn't someone care?
Yeah, why wouldn't someone care about this
right.
stuff as
That's
being a part of the
right.
body of Christ,
Yes.
and not, and seeing what's going on and the insidious nature of what's happening with our children.
Mm-hmm.
We should.
Can I one up? Can I one up you? I think the question would be, how could you not? How could you not care? Somebody else is going to one up us. Is there a more emphatic question that can be raised after that? I don't know. If it's out there, you guys just write us and let us know. But so we have to warn parents. It's the same thing that I did. Listen, in our fellowship, there is no fear or threat of critical race theory infiltrating our local fellowship. There's just not. I mean, praise the Lord. We have some watchmen on the wall who've done incredible amounts of research that are like, we know the buzzwords, and so we would not allow that. But I still went through a series exposing critical race theory and how it seeks to infiltrate the church. Why? Because I exist as a part of this bride.
Amen.
I'm a part of this body, and I care about what is going on, what is happening with the members of this body. So anyway, that's why we cover this. All right, the Committee for Children and their equity statement. Let me read this to you because you just heard a clip here. You heard a couple of clips from the committee. They produce social emotional learning content. They distribute that content. They set up programs that can be adopted by schools. Their reach, I think it would be better described as veins or tentacles because their reach is broader than you might imagine. And then hopefully, if time allows, we'll have two other clips that I want to show you, because whenever the national media, whenever the national media starts telling you that you're wrong about what you think about an issue, and they start doing that emphatically, that means you're on to something. Okay. And so NBC did this, I want to say a year and a half ago. NBC, no, not a year and a half ago. Earlier this year, NBC had a piece where they said parents are concerned about social emotional learning because they think it houses critical race theory. Which, if it's coming from the mainstream media, you should, when you see a piece like that, you should go, oh my goodness, critical race theory is in social emotional learning. Okay. As soon as they tell you, and parents are alarmed, they believe that it's a Trojan horse, you should be screaming and running. Okay, if nothing I have said or revealed to you over the course of this entire discussion has convinced you that social emotional learning is now the clearinghouse for critical race and queer theory, then let NBC's news piece convince you that it's true. Okay, that it's all true. But here we go. The Committee for Children, their equity statement. Earlier, Will the Great noted how they constantly are hiding things and shifting definitions, and they embed things into other definitions, hoping that you won't find it. So even in their equity statement, which a lot of Black people would hear, and they would say, I like equity. And I'm just, guys, I can only be 100 with you, okay? I cannot make nice with people just because feelings, okay? So a lot of Black people would hear this and they would say, no, I like equity. I want education equity. And then you press and you say, so what is that? I don't know, but it sounds good. It sounds equitable. You can't use the word to define the word. What does it mean? It actually means discrimination. It actually means discrimination, because in order to get the outcome that you desire, when you talk about equity, we're not talking about equality. It's not the same thing. Do not use those interchangeably. And in fact, you will read very little these days on equality. Nobody cares about that anymore. That is outdated and antiquated. So now everybody talks about equity, right? Making sure that people get the outcomes that they want. Not that they all have the same opportunities, and then it depends on what they do with that. Nope, it's that everybody gets the same outcome that he or she wants, okay? Or you have a person, excuse me, just based on the color of that person's skin, you presume that that person has endured inequities, and so now on that person's behalf, you will discriminate against the person that you presume has not endured inequities so that you can make things equitable, which is to say, to act inequitably to a person. in favor of another person.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But they don't expect you to drill down on that. They just want you to accept it. It doesn't matter what's in it, just eat it. That's what they say to you. All right, so here's the equity statement for the Committee for Children. All right, follow me here. At Committee for Children, our vision is to contribute to a more just and peaceful world where young people can thrive. To achieve our vision, our mission of fostering the safety and well-being of children through social, emotional learning and development must be rooted in equity. We recognize, condemn, and seek to disrupt systemic racism, which is detrimental for all children, especially Black and Indigenous children and other children of color. Excuse me. Man, I'm so sorry. Let me just stop here for a second. So that's the hook, okay? Because you read that, and there are people who find teaching on preferred races, Darwin would be proud. Mm-hmm. There are people who find a joy in teaching on preferred races as long as it's their race, quote unquote, that is preferred. I'm using their language here. Forgive me for that, but please understand my sarcasm. So as long as it's your preferred race, quote unquote, then you don't care if people teach on preferred races. Mm-hmm. You don't care about equity as long as you benefit from it. You don't care that it discriminates against someone else as long as you feel like they deserve that. So you lean in and they get you with the whole color thing. They get you with the whole race thing. Black and Indigenous people. And we're like, yeah, that's good. And even there's some white people who have bought into this, who carry around a remarkably tremendous amount of guilt. I don't know how else to say that. Why? Because I'm white. And I've been born with a certain set of privileges, never regarding the fact that, okay, but you grew up poor, but still. Like, how did your privileges serve you, though? But still, I was a good kind of poor. There's no good kind of poor. What are you talking about? The same irregularities in the sliced government cheese all ethnicities endured. Yours was not different because you're white. Right. And only people who grew up knew what she was talking about at that moment. Back to their equity statement. We believe that social emotional learning is fundamental to achieving social justice. All right. So far, it's all skin color, right? Therefore, we strive to help young people discover and grow competencies that support their resilience and their ability to contribute to more equitable schools and communities. We also advocate to connect, systemically marginalized young people to the resources, knowledge, and skills they need to thrive, with a particular focus on those youth who are systemically marginalized. Okay, all of this, at this point, I know you know, is critical race theory language. This is critical race theory language. Systemic racism, marginalization, social justice, equity, all of this is CRT language. And at this point, you would be thinking that all of this solely or primarily pertains to skin color, politics, and ideology. But then the statement continues. Let me go back. So we want to focus on those youth who are systemically marginalized because of their race, ethnicity, language, socioeconomic status, comma, gender identity, sexual orientation, and other identity features. I put 2 question marks next to the other identity features. I'm thinking, once we got through that list, what else is there? Language, socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation. What other aspects of a person's identity? I guess maybe religion, maybe so. Maybe that still matters. Again, the Committee for Children. We recognize there's a gap between our commitments and our current state. This is from the Committee for Children. We're working to bridge that gap, knowing it requires a sustained commitment. We'll approach this work from a place of humility and will hold ourselves accountable and seek feedback from staff, board members, and the communities we serve. As we make progress, we'll also likely make mistakes, which we will own, recognize, and correct as we learn and grow. This is absolutely CRT Jello language. This is CRT lapdog language. We will earn the right to speak. We will make sure that we take our cues from those who have that right by birth to speak. And when we misstep, we will fall on our sword and continue to speak, however softly you've determined. That's what that means. These people are producing curricula. These people are implementing programs under the guise of social emotional learning. And they are spoon feeding it to your children from pre-K to 12th grade. And people will be afraid that their kids will go off to college and fall away. As Ken Ham said over 10 years ago now, they're already gone.
Already gone.
They're already gone. Your kids are your enemies while they sit at your table. I've made this point so many times. You put bacon in front of them, good bacon, thick cut, smoked, Applewood, Wright's bacon. I'm sorry, they don't sponsor this show, but let's just be honest, it's the best. And they'll eat your bacon and go off to school to be your enemies. Guys, and they're hoping that parents and grandparents won't know. Well, we have to know. So now let me get to these two clips before we run out of time here. And just to set this up, this is going to be clip number 6, Will the Great. This is NBC doing its special piece on the Much Ado About Nothing, CRT embedded in SEL. These are not the droids that you're looking for. Here we go, clip 6.
In-depth reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on. And tonight it's social emotional learning. This program at school that teaches students mindfulness, helps them manage feelings and show empathy for other people. Think of it kind of like, journaling or meditation. And even though it's been around for years, it's suddenly becoming more and more controversial, and in some instances, a target for conservative groups. Why? They see it as a stepping stone to critical race theory. Vaughn Hilliard takes a look at how schools are helping students with their own social awareness, while some parents are sounding the alarm.
How do you feel this morning, Kaylee girl? I'm happy.
This is social emotional learning.
It's all about building the relationships and knowing the child inside and outside the classroom.
Thousands of schools across the country are using SEL practices to help students both learn and cope with difficult emotions.
We come into class and sometimes the teachers will ask us, how do you feel? Are you okay? And then me talking to them will help me with my schoolwork. 19
states have set standards for SEL programs. Across the country, schools and districts have increased spending on SEL by 45% since 2019. March 11th was the second annual International Social Emotional Learning Day. President Biden and the First Lady released a statement in support, but many of the same so-called parents' rights groups that have taken aim at critical race theory and vaccine mandates are now gunning for SEL. The curriculum has been challenged in more than a half a dozen states.
They talk about power and privilege, which are tenets of critical race theory. They also have a very heavy LGBTQIA agenda.
There's lots of research that suggests that if kids don't feel valued in school, if they feel disconnected, they're not going to engage.
Utah Parents United convinced one school district to remove an SEL curriculum after they discovered one of the lessons linked to a website about dating and sex.
What does social emotional learning look like?
SEL has also become a frequent target of conservative media. The Federalist has called SEL a vehicle for anti-white racism, while Breitbart says it's a Trojan horse for CRT. A National Review says it's the next fight in education.
That's because it is. That's good. But guys, you notice I'm looking at the time here. I know we are not going to get to the next clip. We may, Lord willing, we will play it tomorrow, and it'll be just sort of a half of SEL kind of presentation. But look, let me just tell you something. Whenever you are to be thrown off the scent, okay, there will be decoys and there will be distractions. Yep. There will be false accusations, and there will be a sort of a crazy clumping. All right, there will be a crazy clumping that will happen to you. What do I mean when I say that? So in NBC voice, CRT, vaccine crazies, and all the book burning people are coming. all of the crazies who came for CRT and vaccines, they're now coming to burn up SEL. Please batten down the hatches. These people are coming for everything. Why do they care? Why do they care that parents are sounding the alarm that they don't want their kids, under the guise of social emotional learning, to be directed to LGBTQ plus websites? It's happening, by the way. Why do they care that they don't want their kids to be indoctrinated into racists? They don't want their little children turned into racists on the way home talking to their friends about their oppression. Why do they care? Because it's happening. They care because they know it's real, and now they know you know it's real, and they're hoping to throw you off. Don't be thrown off. We're out of time. Until tomorrow, Lord willing.
God bless.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family